Hey, Mattie, what are we talking about today?
Hey, Michelle. It's a two-parter today. We're trying something new. What we have is a full application, including stats, extracurriculars, and the entire essays, personal statement, and supplements from a real college applicant. And here in part one, we're going to be breaking down their overall profile and reading their essays, talking about general stuff, leading on to a more thorough dissection in part two. You excited to check it out?
Sounds good.
Let's do it. Okay, so yes, as mentioned in our little intro, we're trying something new. In the last dozen plus episodes now, my cat just bit me. My cat just bit me in the arm because I chewed her off. Believe this, Petty. Bad kid. I'm podcasting, young lady. You will stop. In previous episodes, we've talked at length about like my overall theory on college applications, what we're trying to go for, the type of work, and some amount about like how the writing should come down, what you're trying to express. But something I want to do more and more is actually be digging into real applications, either other students or my own students' work or theoretical students who are still applying, actually like really showcasing it. Because I think that's the best way for me to identify, I guess, like the good and bad and really show what the type of stuff I'm talking about, only because it's how I actually do my job. So what I challenged you to do, Michelle, was to head to a website that we're not going to actually, you just found it. I don't know. Like, we're not going to explain how we got this quite yet, but at some point we might. You have a full application. And what we're going to do is you're going to be role playing a little bit. It's like you are the student. And insofar as if I have questions, you'll be able to answer them in a way that is helpful for me, because the way I do it, I almost always have the real student like actually staring there in a webcam with all their stuff. And that'll probably be more helpful in part two when we do some essay stuff. But like that's kind of your role here is somewhere between like helpful Michelle explaining and also just taking some feedback as if it was really you. Okay. So let's begin. We're basically going to begin kind of when I get a real student on my doorstep, either who's like planning to apply or in this case already applied and wants to know like what happened. This is kind of the order I look at their stuff, and probably the order I would look at things if I were to actually be like reading these as in an admissions office. So first we have like basic information. What do you got?
So we are going to talk about Sarah today. She's from New York State, not a first-generation applicant. She's Asian, and she's going to be majoring in computer science.
All right. So I've worked with, at least given the information listed, maybe over a half dozen Sarahs. Maybe not New York, but Northeast. This is certainly a common applicant to schools. I would not glean a ton of information from anything listed here entirely. So let's move on to the stats.
So Sarah's GPA, her weighted, is 4.7, SAT score 1560, so 800 in math and then 760 in reading. And Sarah's taken 9 APs, so computer science principles, physics C, calc B C, English language, physics 1. Out of those 9 APs, 6 were 5s and 3 were 4s.
Right. So this is something I'd be familiar with. Yeah, like it continues to be the type of student I've worked with before, and I go cool, good, and I'd almost feel slightly bad about like how little I bring it up. But this student has the stats they need to be applying to top schools, and I would basically immediately stop thinking about it. So she's past that barrier. So now we move on to her. Yeah, now this is the point where I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll probably work with this girl. Like honestly, like that's. Stats and a good attitude is often a joke I make. Is like those are the two things I look for. Everything else is fairly modifiable and we can make work. But it's like I need those stats. I need them to look like that. Where it's like, yep, this girl did it right. As well as I want to get to meet her. But now I move on to what her extracurriculars are.
The extracurriculars, so robotics for 2 years and leadership position on the executive board, president of a computer type of club, National Honor Society, tutor, and some other clubs. So a little bit more specifics about those extracurriculars. It looks like probably one of her primary extracurriculars was a code club. So she joined it when it was first founded, which was her sophomore year. Then she became vice president her junior year. And she actually organized the school's first hackathon. And she kind of talks about how she had to kind of take leadership there, where she had to talk about it in front of the school board to get it passed. Then she became president of the code club her senior year. And she oversaw all parts of the club during the hackathon, workshops, teaching middle school kids how to code, and then also weekly workshops at the actual high school to teach coding. Also volunteer experience at a summer school, and a couple of awards, a Congressional App Challenge winner. So she created an actual text-based game that was about emotional bullying, National Merit finalist, third place at a regional coding competition, and also National Honor Society.
The only thing that jumps out to me is the text-based game she made. It's kind of neat, like the idea behind it. Although even that, like it's text-based, it doesn't seem like it's the most. This is usually where I would slot her into what I think like her range is. And I guess Charlene, I will send this to you. You can kind of sync this in. I have something very common when I meet students. I refer to my nuclear launch codes. But what it is essentially just an Excel spreadsheet. And yeah, I'll send you the file, Charlene. You can splice what it looks like. And it's basically a color coded. It's a color coded graph of like every school in America. I started with like the U.S. World Report rankings, and then kind of just switched them around to make a little bit more sense on how difficult schools are to get into. And you could see I believe this student, this applicant would immediately have like little to basically no shot at the top level, which is Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Wharton, Yale, and Columbia. I just wouldn't see it. I also think she would probably struggle at the second tier, which is Duke, UPenn, Brown, Dartmouth, Johns Hopkins, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Vanderbilt. But it could happen. Like that's what I'd be telling her is like if we could get her into one school from this range, that would be sick. And it's probably less likely than not, but I like we'd be willing to try. But then there's a third tier, which I love, which is Notre Dame, Cornell, USC, Rice, Carnegie, Georgetown, Berkeley, UCLA, Michigan, NYU, WashU, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Tufts, and Emory. And like if her or say you or her came to meet with me, like I would say like what's you like schools in this range, because this is a type of student I work with. Like this like she's human, you know, like this is a fairly standard like non world beater student. But the key is she has the stats she needs, and it's obvious she cares about what she's doing. It's not like and her application is themed nicely, right? Like she is a computer science applicant who has done a lot of computer science work, and that goes a long way, especially when it comes to like that third tier. And like I would be like, it sounds almost silly, but I'd be like, you like Cornell? Because I think Cornell ED would probably be what I want to do. Like it'd still be very difficult. And hopefully this student would be like, yeah, that sounds sick. I'd love to go to Cornell for computer science or Georgetown or, well, not Georgetown for CS, but like, or what else is on this list? It'll be good. Or yeah, like I would say like, I think I get into Georgia Tech like pretty confidently. I think I get into Michigan pretty confidently. I think you have a good shot at Berkeley, UCLA if you're from California. And then yeah, Carnegie Mellon, Rice, Cornell, USC. Maybe like a Vanderbilt, but probably not. Like those are the schools that I would be saying like we really take our best effort at, because that's where I see the application is that she is a competently structured, has the stats, like there's seemingly no problems, no red flags or warts. But it is unspectacular. You know, she will at the higher than that. I see her losing out to what I refer to as you but stronger. That it's a common theme in this application. There's nothing wrong with this profile. However, there is simply another girl, very possibly from New York, who is also into CS and made a better bullying app. You know, for example. But yeah, like I would not be like, oh my God, I got to meet this kid. Like I am so like, this is going to crush it. But I'd be very interested in talking with them. And that's what I'd be explaining to them. And if they're down for that, then yeah, I'd want to work with them, especially if they're a nice kid, you know, that would be, and it would be about, the emphasis would be about explaining like the why and how behind the work they've done. Because on paper, she seems very, I don't know, like just generic, but also just like not that's like plain, I guess, you know, like that's, and the way this is written, I don't get the impression that she is like already in the process of trying to like boost her what she's done, because I guarantee there's stuff here that she has worked on that she's proud of that we could be doing. So now I guess what kind of schools was she interested in applying to, Michelle?
So a lot of the ones that you mentioned, like the top tier, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, Princeton, UCLA, Yale, Brown, USC, Harvard, CMU, Cornell, Georgia Tech, Michigan, UCSD. She actually applied to a lot of schools, like almost 20.
That itself is not a problem. If she was telling me she really wanted to take cracks at like all the top schools in America, I'd probably like allow for it. But I'd be explaining to her that she's just not going to get in. You know, it's like I think I almost take pride in that I'm much more like, optimistic and or aggressive than most consultants are going to be. Like I'm not the guy that was like, no, how about these nice safeties for you? It's like, yeah, like gas pedal. But there's a line where it's like at the top level, like she's not getting into Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Wharton, Yale, or Columbia. She's just not. She wouldn't want to go to Wharton probably for CS. But like, yeah, like she's just not getting into those schools, and that's not me trying to bury this girl. That is me saying that they're like the students who do get in. Like I know from the very beginning that this kid is on a different level, and they only sometimes do usually get into all these top programs. So like I would talk her down from that because it's a lot of work. It's just not. And I know personally that if I don't see it, if there's a 0% chance, I don't work very well. Mm-hmm. It's like there needs to be that chance for me to kind of go into crazy Mattie mode and really give my best effort. It's just not going to work. I kind of check out in a way that I don't like having to feel that way. So if she was really adamant, like that was her goal, I'd probably tell her to like try somebody else or maybe talk to somebody else who might say the same thing. But what's more likely is how many schools did you apply to in the Duke, Penn, Brown, Dartmouth, Hopkins, U Chicago, Northwestern, Vanderbilt tier?
I think like 10 or so.
Okay, so she shot her shot at both the top and second tier. Okay. Yeah, that's where I'd be much more willing to take a crack with that because who knows? She just gets locked out most likely, but I'd probably explain that to her is like we're gonna do everything we can. We're gonna take cracks at this, but it would be that third tier. It's like the Notre Dame, Cornell, USC, Rice, Carnegie, Georgetown, Berkeley, UCLA, Michigan, NYU, WashU, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Tufts, Emory. And how many did she apply from that tier?
Let's see, like 5 or so.
Yeah, so I would really be doubling down on that, and I would basically explain to her is like historically a student of this like of this strength, you know, just before we do any of the essay stuff. I'm better at getting a student into over half of like the schools in that third tier than I am in getting them into one from that second tier. That's why the schools are tiered. It is that cut and dry that as soon as you get to right around Vanderbilt, it gets much tighter and much more difficult very quickly. I don't like to say that it's easy to get into like Berkeley or UVA or any of those schools. However, if you have the stats, over and over and over, like having the stats plus a clean, like logic, and that'll be the pros I'll be telling you, like a logical application. You are a girl who has worked hard and has obviously is academically qualified, and you're interested in computer science, and you have a full logical background of computer science. And now it is our job to very cleanly and logically not just explain that you love computer science. You know, it's not just FLL like, oh, it's the best, but what about computer science and how is that journey gone the last 4 years where you have basically really come to understand what you like about computer science, why it matters to you, and what you're now going to go on to do at these schools as relates to it. That clean, very easy to consume, timeline of events that like takes you all the way through school. It's just 312, you know, it's in the previous episode. That is what I really focus on with students like these. And it hits, like it gets you into a school like a Carnegie Mellon. It gets you into a Rice or even a Cornell, especially if you're playing early decision. Like there's a game to play here. So and if she was cool with that, then yeah, I'd want to work with her. Okay, so now what we're gonna do now is, well, I guess normally a student coming to me wouldn't actually have this written, although sometimes students have the work written. But basically, this is the actual personal statement, and then we're gonna read the Yale supplements just because it's like kind of encompasses it. I'm going to have Michelle now actually read them, and then we can talk. That will kind of give a much more full opinion of like what her application actually looked like. So first, personal statement. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. A window into the soul. For most people, this would be the eyes. The eyes cannot lie. They often tell more about a person's emotions than their words. What distinguishes a fake smile from a genuine one? The eyes. What shows sadness? The eyes. What gives away a liar? The eyes. But are the eyes the only window into the soul? Recently, I began painting with watercolors. With watercolors, there's no turning back. If one section is too dark, it's nearly impossible to lighten the area again. Every stroke must be done purposefully, every color mixed to its exact value. I laid my materials before me, preparing myself for the worst. I checked my list of supplies, making sure my setup was perfect. I wet my brush, dipped it into some yellow ochre, and dabbed off the excess paint. Too little water on my brush. I dipped my brush back into my trusty water jar. The colors swirled beautifully, forming an abstract art piece before my eyes. It's a shame that I couldn't appreciate it. I continued mixing colors to their exact value. More alizarin crimson, more water, more yellow ochre, less water, more phthalo blue. The cycle continued. Eventually, I was satisfied. The colors looked good, there was enough contrast between facial features, and the watercolors stayed inside the lines. Craving feedback, I posted my art to Snapchat. I got a few messages such as wow and pretty, but one message stood out. You were anxious with this one, huh? Anyways, love the hair. I was caught off guard. Was it a lucky guess? Did they know something I didn't? I immediately responded, haha, how could you tell? No response. What I didn't know at the time was that my response would come a few months later while babysitting. Since the girl I was babysitting loved art, I took out some Crayola watercolors and some watercolor paper for her to play with. After I went to the bathroom and came back, the watercolors were doused with water. You were impatient with this one, huh? Anyways, love the little dog you drew. The little girl looked up at me confused. How could you tell? You used a lot of water for a brighter color, but you couldn't wait for it to slowly soak in. Oh. Now I would be lying if I said I realized the connection between the two events immediately. Instead, I made the connection when I decided to sit down one day and objectively critique my art. The piece that I once loved now seemed like a nervous wreck. The paper was overworked, the brushstrokes were undecided, the facial features blended together, and each drop of water was bound inside the lines as if it was a prisoner in a cage. From then on, I started noticing pieces of personality in additional creations surrounding me. Website designs, solutions to math problems, code written for class, and even the preparation of a meal. When I peer around at people's projects during Code Club, I notice the clear differences between their code. Some people break it up by commenting in every possible section. Others breeze through the project, not caring to comment or organize their code. I could also see clear differences in personalities when our club members began coding the Arduino for the first time. Some followed the tutorials to the letter, while others immediately started experimenting with different colored LEDs and ways of wiring the circuit. It became clear to me that as humans, we leave pieces of our souls in everything we do, more than we intend to. If we entertain this thought, perhaps the key to better understanding others around us is simply noticing the subtler clues under our noses. Perhaps there are endless windows to the soul, and we simply need to peer through them.
So that should cover the kind of basic information and what I would be most interested in seeing up front, because what leads to now are the actual essay content. And what we'll be doing next is I will be going through the full personal statement, and we've chosen the Yale supplement because it covers a lot of good material to really break down like the pros and minuses of what Sarah here has chosen to write about. And through that, we'll get a much better idea of why their application was or was not successful at all. Sound good, Michelle?
Can't wait!
Thank you for watching College with Mattie. For more information or a coaching session with Mattie, visit collegewithmattie.com. You can follow College with Mattie on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Tune in next week for more episodes, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.